Maybe the sutta is so clear that, maybe my explanation is so clear. No questions, no problems. Anytime you have a question, you can ask. It's the right situation. What is the right time to speak? Oh, I see. That's what he meant by the right time. The woman who asked about the right time, is she still here? Because I thought, while I was walking down, I remembered there's a sutta. It occurs in the Anguttara Nikaya Book of Sixes. Let me see how it goes. It's a question about the right time. It's the right time to approach a monk who's developed in mind in order to ask questions. This is a discussion amongst the monks, and different monks present different opinions. Then I think it's Mahakachana who enters the discussion, and he says the right time is whenever one's mind is overcome by any of the five hindrances. If anybody wants to reach for that copy of the numerical discourses, Sandy, I think it's the same book that you brought to me during the class. Excuse me? You gave it to Kaidi.
How does Suki know everything?
Okay.
I guess it's 12.
Oh yeah. This is after coming back from their alms round. The monks are sitting around and they're discussing here's the expression, what is the proper occasion for going to see an esteemed elder? Okay, so one monk says when that esteemed elder has come back from his alms round and he's sitting erect with his legs crossed, having established mindfulness before him, that's just when he starts his meditation. That's the proper occasion for going to see him. So then another monk says, no, that's not the right time. It's when the monk is, then he says that's not the right time because he's still fatigued after his alms round. But in the evening, when he's emerged from meditation and is sitting in the shade of his dwelling, holding his body upright with his legs crossed, that's the time to see him. Another says, no, that's not the right time, because at that time he's focusing on an object of meditation. But rather the right time is when night begins to fade and the dawn is coming, and then he's sitting with his legs crossed, holding his body erect. Oh, but then another monk says that's not the right time, because then his body is fresh after the night's sleep, and so it's easy for him to meditate. Then finally, it's Mahakachana says, in the presence of the Blessed One, I heard and learned this, that there are 6 occasions for going to see an esteemed elder. One is when one's mind is overcome by sensual lust. Second, when the mind is overcome by ill will. Third, the mind is overcome by dullness and drowsiness. Fourth, the mind is overcome by restlessness and remorse. Sixth, the mind is overcome by doubt. And the seventh, that's the fifth, and then the sixth is when a monk does not know what object to use for meditation in order to reach the destruction of the asavas, the taints. So that's the right time.
But that doesn't coincide with when the monk might be getting up from his meditation, or it still doesn't really answer the question when...
Yeah. It answers it from the point of view of the inquirer, but it doesn't settle the issue from the point of view of the one who's going to be asked. Right. So if my mind is overcome by sensual lust, I still have to find what is the right time to go to him. I'm not going to barge in on him when he's sitting in his... But generally the right time would be...
after lunch on a Saturday afternoon after Sutta study.
Usually one would fix, one would appoint a time beforehand, usually when the monks come together at lunchtime. They say, I would like to speak to you, what would be a good time? And then the elder will give a good time. We're still trying to settle what was a good time to speak to somebody. Yes, Simon, right?
Yes, Bante, can you explain a little bit, because I'm kind of confused that
yeah.
So, but why the and there are so many different applications. So how does that different topics apply to avoid conflict? Is this conflict avoid between the Buddha and his disciples, or between the teacher and the student? And also I have second question. Sometimes that the conflict just cannot...
What is that? Usually, is the second question related to the first?
Yes.
Okay.
Sometimes the conflict cannot be avoided.
Yeah.
So if that's the situation, how do we do about that?
The first is an interesting question. I don't think it's a question of conflict between the Buddha and his students. It seems to me, this is just my conjecture, as I said, during the class, that it seems that the theme or the umbrella that brings all of these items together is the advice for a monk who's going to be expounding the Dhamma. And so this is sort of the proper things to do in teaching, maybe to avoid getting into conflict with the audience, with getting them confused, and maybe getting into conflict with others who might hear about one's talk and dispute with one. So like we have the thing about not extolling and not disparaging. So if one extols some people in the audience and then disparages others, it creates ill will between, it creates improper affection from those that one is praising and ill will from those one is disparaging. But instead one just teaches teaches the Dhamma, teaches the principle here, and then one lets those who are following either the wrong path or the right path come to their own decisions, since one is not directly speaking about them. And then, of course, in the case of speaking privately, what is true and beneficial, and speaking openly or in a group, what is sharp but also true and beneficial. Well, in case of speaking privately, then one avoids conflict because then sort of ill will, entanglement, because one is not criticizing that person in a group in a way that will embarrass them. In the case where you have to speak sharply to somebody in the group, of course there might be some feeling of ill will and resentment, but probably in this case, the need to correct that person, especially this would be a person who's not amenable to private advice, so that the whole group has to call that person in and speak harshly, speak to him sharply. In that case, I mean, some conflict is unavoidable, but it's necessary in order to straighten that person out. In the case of, for example, not adhering to local usage and not overriding common usage, in this way, one shows the flexibility in adapting one's teaching to the language, customs, expectations of the audience, and so one avoids conflict and feelings of ill will from the audience. So that is the first question. The second question was, what does one do? What does one do when conflict cannot be avoided? There's actually whole sets of teachings by the Buddha in various places on how to settle disputes, what to do when conflicts break out, and how to settle disputes. Of course, since the Buddha faced that situation within the monastic order, so most of them deal with, conflicts break out between monks. And so even to avoid conflicts in the first place, it's in the Anguttara Nikaya book of sixes. He teaches what are called the 6 roots of disputes. So he tells the monks that you should look into yourself. If you see any of these 6 roots of disputes, then you should abandon them. And actually, they turn out to be more than 6 because several of them are grouped into pairs of related items like ill will and hostility, envy and miserliness. So that I counted them, they come to 11 actually. And then also in the book of sixes, he speaks of 6 principles of harmony and respect. So these are ways to avoid disputes in the first place by promoting harmony in bodily action, harmony in speech, harmony or loving kindness in bodily action, loving kindness in speech, loving kindness in thoughts, then sharing the gains of the Sangha together, observing a common set of precepts, and together holding the view of the Buddha Dharma. Then there are more specific measures that come. I don't want to go into detail about them now. Do you know how to use that? There's the microphone part you have to put close to your mouth.
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Hello. Yes, Bhante. I'm so glad I'm here today to listen to your talk. It is very surprise for me, and I'm so, I don't know what to say, but I'm really happy to be here today. Actually, okay, let me straight to the point. Actually, someone asked us a question about Abhidhamma.
Yeah.
And we cannot give them a very good answer because we also have a little doubt about our knowledge.
Yeah.
So today I would like to ask Bhante on behalf of them.
Yeah.
Actually, they asked us about Kamaja Rupa.
About
Kamaja Rupa.
oh, Kamaja Rupa.
Yes, is Bhava Rupa.
Bhava Rupa.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we know that in Bhava Rupa we
Yeah.
have Burisa,
Yeah.
yes, and we have
Yeah.
Iti.
Yeah.
And we also know that according to this karma,
Yeah.
according to our karma,
Yeah.
we will be reborn as a
Yeah.
man or
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
woman. And this is natural way. But they ask like this. Nowadays in China, because of one child policy, so most of parents in China,
Yeah.
they just want to select
Yeah.
Burisa Bhava.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
To select to have a male child.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
And what they did, they will go to a doctor and they will say, look, doctor, I want you to select Burisa Bhava. And then after that, you can put it to
Yeah.
the wife, so that she can get a boy.
Yeah.
So in this way, they say, does it have anything to do with karma concerning with our
Yeah.
intention? We have like we selected on our own will to have a certain child. So does it means anything? Do you know what I mean?
Is there anybody from China here? From Dalu, from mainland China? I think China has I think China has abolished the one-child penalty. Is that correct? They stopped that policy already.
Yeah, but I mean, before that.
Okay, before
yes,
that. And to my knowledge, there's no substance or medicine that one could take that will determine the sex of the child. Anybody? Is that correct? I mean, I'm not up to the latest in reproductive technologies, but I don't think that there is such a substance. If a doctor is prescribing anything and saying, you take this and you'll have a male child,
No, I
he's treating the
think
patient. The only way that the parents can be sure of having a male child is they do a prenatal screening of some sort or test of, what do they call it? Sonogram, whereby they can determine the sex of the child, and then if they see that it's a female child, a female fetus, then they abort it, correct?
But
I'm not saying that I approve of the, I mean, is my understanding correct? Yeah.
But Fante, in China,
Yeah.
they actually have a pre-selected sex of a child. That means they will extract a cell from the father and
Yeah.
cell from the mother and put it together somehow. I mean, the medical term I cannot describe, but they can select a cell
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a male or female and put in the mother's womb. They can do that nowadays.
Oh, I see. Maybe they fertilize a bunch of egg cells, and then they can examine, was it the chromosomes, to see that they have the combination that will develop into a male child,
Right.
and then they will implant that one into the mother's womb.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
okay.
Yes. So in this case, Fante,
Yeah.
how do we determine this is karma or what is it?
You know, I can't. you know, I don't know how to determine these things.
You just have to come to the Abhidhamma retreat.
Yeah, I could explain the Abhidhamma, but when it comes to some of these questions, the subtleties are beyond my powers of comprehension.
That's right, Bhante. I thank you so much for this confirmation, Bhante.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it seems to me that, I don't know, it seems to me to be, whether you call it unwholesome karma, or unjust for people, or just socially unjust for people to in advance select the sex of their child rather than to leave it to chance, my opinion. Did you want to say something, Steve? You could take the microphone.
Actually, believe it or not, I think my question relates both to the Venerable's question and this sutta, because I was just recently talking to a monk who is American but translates many Chinese texts, and one of the texts he's been working on is about how couples in China can, through some kind of practice, select the sex by somehow matching up the gandhabba to the parents in a somewhat mystical way. And I bring it up because when I heard this, I had a pretty strong aversion and, a non-conflict. And of course, I wanted to say, this is kind of crazy. And my question, I guess, is then, is it okay to even say this to a monk? Or should I just be quiet and just go away? Is it a okay way of engaging this discussion?
I think probably the most skillful way is not to disparage a monk himself for saying that, but to raise it in the form of we call it the rhetorical question. Like, don't you think that it shows a particularly biased attitude for parents to be performing a ritual to guarantee that they're going to have a male child rather than a female child? Is that the point?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So one could put it in the form of, or you could say, this doesn't quite, seem right to me.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's proper. Not to sort of, if he's giving a lecture, not to be provocative. Okay, I think unless somebody has an urgent question, I think we have to stop for the day. Okay, so we'll end with 3 half bows to the Buddha.